love somebody's baby, 'cause somebody sure been loving mine. And everybody, yeah, around me knew it, but I was in the dark for such a long time. Now I've got to get what she's been giving, get myself together and start living. I've got to hold somebody's baby. I know somebody sure been holding mine. And lately, yeah, when I try to squeeze her, she said maybe later, but right now I just don't have time. It's not my fault, but I need a little help. And now I'm looking out for number one. I'm starving for some love. Somebody, I've got to love somebody's baby. I know that somebody, they sure been loving mine. You see, the reason why I know somebody's been loving my baby, I got to find me somebody. I got to find someone to share my love with.
Law enforcement agency get an informer who knows as much about organized crime as the one the FBI relied on to help them put away some of the country's biggest mob figures. The informant who fed the FBI information from inside the mob was codenamed All-Pro. Among other things, he told the FBI exactly how the mob made money and how it exercised control over the nation's largest labor union. And he met with them regularly, in secret, to share his information with them.
He was the most important source of information that the FBI has ever had on labor racketeering and the domination of certain labor unions by organized crime.
Oliver Buck Revell, the executive assistant director of the FBI, supervised the war on the mob and was assisted by the most unlikely of informants, Jackie Presser, who at the same time he was informing on the mob, was working with the mob as he rose to become president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, the largest and richest union in the country, with over 1,600,000 members and billions of dollars in assets. For the last 5 years of Presser's career as an informant, his FBI contact was this man, Robert Frederick, then the supervisor of the Bureau's organized crime squad in Presser's hometown, Cleveland, Ohio.
His information was used throughout the country in various investigations, whether it was in Chicago or New York, Kansas City, Las Vegas. He provided information that was the basis for wiretaps, probably undercover operations. The information I was receiving was being used by agents throughout the country where mafia influence was the strongest on Teamsters.
One of those FBI agents was Bill Owsley in Kansas City.
Jackie Presser was able to give us the type of information that we needed, the pieces of the puzzle that we needed to go along with what we had developed.
Bill Owsley says Presser's information was critical in a series of mafia conspiracy cases the FBI was investigating. Conspiracies involving the mob's influence over a Teamster billion-dollar pension fund that was used to build and control Las Vegas casinos.
He was able to give us a historical background of the how the pension fund began, that it was begun as a scam, as a way to steal money. He gave us the fact that mobsters and teamsters are linked up together. He gave us that background as to how the loans are made, giving the hidden ownership and how the skim comes out of Las Vegas.
The skim, millions of untaxed dollars stolen from casinos by the mob, had been flowing for decades. Presser's information helped cut off the flow of money and send scores of mafiosi to jail. Mafiosi like
Joseph Ayupa, the boss of the Chicago family, 28.5 years. Jackie Cerrone, the underboss of the Chicago family, 28.5 years. Milton Rockman, Cleveland money mover and LCN associate, about 10 years.
And his information would go on to help convict mafiosi across the country, including the heads of New York's 5 mafia families, Teamster officials, and assorted racketeers. How did Presser become one of the FBI's most valuable informants? Tony Hughes, a former heavyweight boxing contender and loan shark, was Jackie Presser's best friend, a Teamster business agent with a 6-figure salary who acted as one of Presser's bodyguards, and talks for the first time about how Presser got involved with the FBI.
The FBI came and seen us, wanted to see both of us, came to our office and says that there was a hit threat on me and Jackie, mostly Jackie, but I would most likely would be me too because I was with him all the time.
When Hughes and Presser first talked to the FBI in the early 1970s, Jackie Presser was a wealthy, mob-connected labor leader in Cleveland, and heir apparent to his father, Bill, an Ohio-based international vice president of the Teamsters. Why would Jackie Presser risk informing against the mob and the Teamsters? Ambition and fear. Fear that he, Presser, might be kidnapped and murdered, like former Teamster leader Jimmy Hoffa, or that he would be blown to pieces, like the victims of a mob war that was raging on the streets of Cleveland. And Tony Hughes says informing for the FBI fit into Presser's ambition, his plan to become president of the Teamsters, a plan that suited Jackie Presser's personality. People say he was charming, that he could be a con man.
Charmed you right out of your... He was he really was fast on his feet. I wouldn't say he was a con man. I say he was a very clever, vindictive, vicious individual, jealous. If you had something, he would be jealous of it. And he wanted everything. And he would tell you one thing, he would tell him one thing, and me another thing.
And to keep his story straight, Presser used Tony Hughes as a go-between to the FBI and the mob.
I knew the Wiseguys, I knew the policemen, I knew federal judges, I knew everybody in this city that was supposed to be known. That's why he brought me around.
For years, Tony Hughes would keep in touch with local mafiosi on behalf of Jackie Presser, as well as acting as contact with the FBI. When Bob Frederick, the FBI contact agent, wanted to see Presser, he would call Hughes. Similarly, if Presser wanted to see Frederick, he would call Hughes. When a meeting had been arranged, typically for a Sunday morning, Frederick would wait here in a public park on Lake Erie just outside Cleveland. Hughes would pick him up and drive Frederick to Presser's home nearby.
Jackie was constantly concerned about, how am I doing? You know, is the information I'm giving you accurate? Is it correct? Did you find out? Wasn't I right? He was always interested in knowing whether or not the information he was giving was good. He wanted to know. He was concerned that maybe some of the stuff that he gave was not correct.
The information he provided to us was always checked and verified, and we never found it to be incredible. It was always accurate, and it was, even when it was against his self-interest.
Authorities say Gregory Scarpa made his reputation as a member of a powerful crime family living in the shadow of death and violence. But he met his match when he confronted one killer that didn't carry a gun. What followed was a death sentence. But as Harold Dow tells us, this one wasn't a deterrent to crime. Some are calling it instead a license to kill.
For the last year and a half, there has been a bloody gangland war being fought on the streets of Brooklyn, New York. So far, at least 13 members of the Colombo crime family have been murdered. Another 16 barely escaped with their lives. Law enforcement authorities say the violence began as a power play to replace former Colombo boss Carmine the Snake Persico, who is now serving 100 years in prison.
From, I guess, November the 18th until basically early January, there was this shooting war.
Charles Hines is Brooklyn's district attorney.
I mean, I have no problem letting these folks blow each other away. I think it's good for us ultimately. The problem is, you know, most of them don't get annual firing practice, you know, so when they start shooting at each other, they begin to miss, and they end up killing innocent people.
Hines says that when an innocent victim was gunned down last November in what he called a mob-controlled bagel shop, something had to be done.
What we did was, on my orders, we served grand jury subpoenas on 41 Colombo associates, capos, and soldiers. It stopped the war because when they're under subpoena, they can't shoot. They all hide, you know. They watch too many, I think, Class C movies.
But authorities say there is one man they couldn't stop, a man considered the most feared of Carmine Persico's allies, a man who police say is probably responsible for escalating the Colombo War.
His name is Gregory Scarpa, seen here in a 1986 police surveillance tape.
Law enforcement sources have identified him over the years as a capo regime, top lieutenant in the Colombo crime family.
Police sources claim Scarpa not only directed some of the mob killings, but committed at least 2 of the murders himself.
Ordinarily, it'd be very unusual for a capo to shoot. He would have any number of people that he could direct hits.
To carry out a shooting?
Yes, sure.
But it's unusual for a capo
to
do that.
Yeah.
And the reason police say this capo began to shoot is even more unusual. For this is what Gregory Scarpa looks like today. His body ravaged by AIDS. His doctors have given him only months to live.
This is the hand that was dealt to me. I'll play the hand. If I could outbluff the opponent, which is death, fine. If I can't, I lose the hand.
Last summer, Scarpa showed up in a courtroom in Brooklyn, New York, just long enough to receive a cash settlement from the hospital he says gave him an AIDS-infected blood transfusion during an operation for a bleeding ulcer.
I think it was about like 5 or 6 donations that were used. One of them was HIV infected. His blood wasn't tested, and I received that blood.
When we chat a little bit, we'll talk about maybe some of the feelings you have now and what changes you may have gone through.
It's rare for an accused mobster to sit down for an interview, but on this day, Gregory Scarpa wanted to send a message to his friends and to his enemies that he would not surrender to AIDS.
I will show them the courage that I've displayed all this time, the bravado. I will show them that, hey, this is still me. There isn't anything on earth that I will hide from or back up from. And I certainly won't do it with this either.
Police say Scarpa had been true to his word. A few days after our conversation, he was arrested and charged with 2 murders and the conspiracy to commit 2 more, all within the last year.
Authorities have speculated that because Gregory Scarpa has AIDS, that he used AIDS as a license to kill.
From what I know, that's very, very true. He was dying. He wanted to settle scores himself. Nothing for him to lose.
This man, a high-level member of the Colombo crime family, agreed to speak to Street Stories on the condition that we conceal his identity and change his voice.
And even though he has AIDS and admits himself that he's close to death, you still fear him? Even now?
Until he's in the ground, and maybe afterwards, too.
Really?
Sure.
Oh, yeah. They're no candy store gangsters, I'll tell you that much.
According to Justice Department documents, an informant named Joseph Ambrosino says Scarpa personally committed at least 2 murders. One, the shooting of a mobster named Larry Lampisi, and the other, the shotgun murder of Nick Granzio, to whom Scarpa allegedly said before firing, "This one's from Carmine." A few weeks after his arrest, Scarpa's attorney was able to get him transferred from prison to a nearby hospital and then released on bail.
The allegations that were laid out by the informant are total and complete allegations. They're totally and completely false. This fella, Joseph Ambrosini, was a person that I wouldn't even allow myself to talk to.
Who is Ambrosino?
He worked for Scarpa. Whatever Scarpa told him to do, he would do. They were very close.
If he was there, let them charge him with the murders, not me, because I wasn't.
Authorities have a theory that Gregory Scarpa got AIDS, and he used AIDS as a license to kill.
If I'm to be what they allege me to be, why do I need AIDS to be that way? I could be that way without having AIDS.
Today, Gregory Scarpa is under house arrest and under 24-hour surveillance. He's facing 2 murder charges and a death sentence from AIDS. But Scarpa intends to stay tough until the end.
It's a killer. No question about it. It's a killer, and I accept it. Maybe I'll get lucky and get a heart attack and not die of the AIDS virus. Heart attack, bango. It's all over.
While Gregory Scarpa continues his battle with AIDS, another battle rages. In the last 6 weeks, there have been 6 shootings in what police say is the continuing Colombo crime war. Next on Street Stories,
for 6 years, FBI agent Joseph Pistone posed as jewel thief Donnie Brasco and immersed himself in the mafia underground. Despite some close calls, he made his way deeper into several mob families, more than any other previous law enforcement agent. He was pulled out by the FBI when the mob ordered him to kill a rival gangster to prove he was worthy of the mob's inner circle. Pistone's undercover work resulted in more than 100 convictions of mob figures in such famous cases as the Pizza Connection and the Mafia Commission. There is now a contract on his life, and he and his family live a life of disguises and assumed names. Joseph Pistone's book is called Donnie Brasco, My Undercover Life in the Mafia, and we are pleased to have him tell this story, which has gotten really some, the Boston Globe says, so entertaining you have to remind yourself that it is deadly serious. Time magazine said a daring double life reveals the full extent of the dangerous voyage into the underworld. Why Donnie Brasco?
Just a name that I had heard somewhere in the movies or somewhere and just picked it out. I liked the sound of it.
How did it start? You're an FBI agent. You were an FBI agent involved in what aspect of the FBI work?
I was involved in the criminal aspect, bank robberies, truck hijackings, fugitives, gambling, and vice-type investigations prior to getting involved in the undercover work.
And how did the undercover work begin?
Well, it began in the early 70s, 73, 74. I became involved in short-term operations, sting operations, buy-bust situations. And then in late 74, 75, I became involved in an operation, ironically, out of Tampa, Florida, which had to do with theft of luxurious automobiles, heavy equipment, airplanes. And there was a group of thieves that would steal on order, whatever you wanted. And we had an informant that was in this group, and he introduced me into it, and I ran and worked with this crew.
Now, what would you do?
I'd actually go out and steal an automobile or a piece of heavy equipment with them.
And the FBI would say, what were the guidelines for that kind of activity?
Well, the guidelines are that there are certain criminal activities that you can get involved in as long as there's no violence.
So it's okay to steal to maintain your cover?
To maintain your cover, and also to gain evidence and intelligence on the criminal group.
But no violence?
No violence.
Yeah, and they...
Unless the only time there's any leeway is if you're protecting your own life,
you can take care of yourself.
Right.
When did you begin to meet these figures that we come to know here, like Lefty and Sonny Black?
Late 75, it's 1976, is when this particular operation into the Mafia took place in New York City.
Yeah. You began to hang around the bars and the places that they would eat?
Yes, I would hang around restaurants and bars that known Wiseguys hung out in New York City.
And how did give us a sense for all of us who are laymen as to how this kind of happened. So you hang around and all of a sudden you're from an Italian neighborhood?
Yes.
Yeah, so you had a familiarity with
I had a background in how Wiseguys think and operate themselves.
You'd known similar people as a kid?
Yes, as a youngster growing up.
And so how would you make the connection?
Well, it took a period of 5, 6 months before I got into any conversation with anyone, and just
you'd be there and they'd see you.
I'd be there, I'd hang around, and they'd get to see your face, and finally a breakthrough came with I got friendly with a bartender in one of the places.
Yeah, and he said?
And we got into discussion, and you know, who are you, where you're from, this type of conversation. But you know, you don't become too pushy, and you don't give too much information. And then from meeting him, he introduced me to someone else, and you get into conversation with them, and then they continuously see you every day and every night.
When did you meet Benjamin Ruggiero?
I met Lefty in '76. I was introduced to him by actually by an individual by the name of Tony Mira, who was the first Bonanno guy that I met.
Yeah, so Lefty was with the Bonanno family.
Yes.
You sort of went back and forth between two families, Bonanno and Colombo.
Well, I started out with some guys in the Colombo family out of Brooklyn, New York, and I spent some time with them. But then once I hooked up with Mira and Ruggiero, I shifted the focus to the Bonanno family.
So you're in Florida, and to tell me this story, you're in Florida, and you want to impress some of Lefty's friends, or some of your friends?
Well, we were mutual friends that were Wiseguys out of New York.
Yeah, and you're down in Palm Beach or somewhere in Miami?
Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
And so you want to impress these guys, and so you want to have a party on a yacht, right?
Right.
You need a yacht.
Yep.
Where do you go?
Well, at that particular time, the FBI was involved in the app scam undercover investigation. And a boat that they were using was docked in Fort Lauderdale. So I made contact with the agent that I knew that was working the case, and I asked him, what's the chances of using the boat? And he said, no problem. And I said, well, what's it look like with the investigation, the app scam investigation? And he said, well, we have no target date to surface. There won't be any problem using a boat. Yeah. So I made arrangements, and myself, Lefty, and some of the other Wiseguys and their girlfriends, and there were a couple wives, I guess. We went out on a day's cruise on this particular boat. Yeah. Well, as it unfortunately, maybe about a month or 2 months later, app scam surfaced, and a photograph of this boat, which was called the Left Hand, appeared in Time magazine.
Yeah, and Lefty saw it.
Lefty saw it and confronted me with it. In fact, we were back down in the Miami area, and we were out bouncing one evening, and we went to have breakfast about 3 in the morning, and he threw the picture of the boat at me.
And he said what?
Well, he said, Donnie, you ever see this boat? And I saw it, and my heart went up to my throat, and I said no. And he said, that's the boat we were on, a couple months ago. And I said, I don't think so. And he said, sure. He said, look at the name. That's the same name. That's the same boat. He said, what about it? So I said, well, Left, I told you that how I set this up was through a girl I met. She told me it was her brother's boat. And he said, well, that's a government boat. That's an FBI boat. So I knew that, that he was 100% sure that that was the boat. But my comments to him were, well, we must be smarter than congressmen and senators because...
Look, they didn't catch us.
They didn't catch us, so...
That was your first time that you feared being exposed?
Well, no, it was... I had a couple other ones prior to that.
Stay with us. Night Watch continues. We are back. There was another time in which you almost got exposed, in which there was somebody raised a question about you, right?
Yes, that was early on when I was with the Colombo crew out of Brooklyn. I had a bit of a difference with one of the individuals that belonged to this crew, and it was a personality conflict more than anything else. He didn't like me, and I didn't like him, and he raised the question of I had been around at that period of time, maybe 8, 9 months, and he raised the question that
maybe you weren't legit.
Maybe I wasn't legit. He wanted to know a little more about me. So he confronted me with it, and you have to, to maintain your credibility, you have to maintain the part of a, of a street guy or a wise guy. So when he confronted me, I basically told him, look, I'm not giving you anybody's name that I pulled jobs with anywhere. How do I know that you're not an informant or something? Well, we went back and forth, and all the time knowing that I'm going to have to
do something,
give him a name. So I finally gave him a name of an individual who had been clued in prior, that who was a thief in the Miami area.
This was a guy who was in prison, who had been a thief, and who also was an informant, and who was under the control
of another agent.
Of another agent.
And this agent just was to tell him that he had done scores with Donnie Brasco, and that he was a good guy. He didn't know that Donnie Brasco was really an FBI agent. Well, when I gave him the individual's name, he said, okay, I'll go make some calls and see if I can get in touch with this guy, or somebody else in Miami that knows this guy or whatever. And while he was gone maybe 4.5 hours. They locked the door of the club, and his parting words were, if I don't come back with the right information, you go out of here in a rug. So that was one of probably the most hairiest time, because I couldn't get out of the club.
Escape.
There were 4 other individuals in there, and I had no way out if he came back.
And you had no way of knowing that your agent had gotten to this other guy to say, expect a phone call.
Right. I had no way of knowing if he had gotten to him, or if the
guy would lie,
the informant would tell the truth, because he might have forgot about it, or he might have gotten scared and said, hey, I'm not vouching for somebody.
Or he may have had a way to send a signal which would say, I'm telling you, but in fact, this guy's an informer or something else. So what happened?
Well, he did...
Obviously, you didn't go out in a rug.
No. Obviously, it turned out all right, because when he came back, he said, okay, he said, you check out.
Why do you do this? I mean, once you get in, you've had a couple of close calls. You've got a family you're not seeing. You've got 3 daughters, right?
Right.
And they're not seeing you, and they don't know what you're doing, and you can't really be a father, and you're out living in this apartment, and they don't know what you're doing, whether you're running around, and the people that you're with, and what danger you're to. You have a chance to get out. Why do you do it?
Well, you do it, there's several reasons why you do it. You do it because it's your job. That's number one. You're an FBI agent, or you're,
Yeah, but at some point you'd say 6 months is okay, and 2 years is okay, guys, but this is getting a bit much.
Then you do it because you enjoy the pump that you get.
That's what I'm asking.
The street, the street adrenaline flowing.
Yeah.
You enjoy that type of investigation, that type of work, because you are always on the edge.
It becomes a game.
Well, a game of life and death.
Yeah, that's right, but still it's a pump to it.
Right.
And it's exciting. And being on the edge
is exciting if you're that type of an individual.
And were you that type?
Obviously, because I did it for so long. Yeah.
Tell me who Sonny Black was.
Well, Sonny Black was a member of the Bonanno crime family out of New York City.
The famous Joe Bonanno.
Correct. Who at the time in 1979, after they killed Carmine Galenti, who was the boss of the Bonanno family, Sonny Black became a captain in the family, and
there he is in that picture, right?
Right.
And that's you to the left.
That's me to the left.
Now, who's this woman?
That was Sonny's girlfriend.
Okay, there's Sonny Black, the late Sonny Black.
The late
Go
Sonny
ahead.
Black. And he rose to be the most powerful captain in the Bonanno family, and at one point in time he was the acting boss.
And the next one, that's Sonny Trafficante, isn't it?
Santo Trafficante out of Tampa, Florida.
Right. He is supposed to be the mafia boss in, what, all of Florida, or just...
Well, he was. He's deceased now. He died, I think, last year or 2 years.
Wasn't he somehow connected to the Kennedy thing, and there's some stories about him being connected?
Well, that's what they claim, yes.
Okay, let me take a look at the next picture, too, because this is, we'll get on to the Sonny Black story. This is another one of Sonny Black. There he is in the middle, right?
No, Sonny Black's to the right.
Oh, that's right, to the very right.
Lefty Ruggiero with his, right next to Sonny with his arms, you're seeing the side of him.
Yeah.
And then in the middle it's Nicky Santoro, and then an individual by the name of Booby on the left with the sunglasses. Yeah. They were all members of Sonny Black's crew.
Okay. All right, let me take one more slide and then we'll come back. These are really interesting. That's
Tony Mira. That's the individual I mentioned previously.
Yeah. Now, Sonny Black, he becomes the acting head of the Bonanno family, doesn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a big guy.
Can't get any other than the boss. That's
yeah. Other than the boss of all bosses, or whoever that is, you can't get any higher. There comes a time in which Sonny Black agrees that you can be made. What does that mean?
Well, I was going to become an official member of the Bonanno crime family.
What do you do to become an official member?
What do you do prior, or?
No, what is there a certain ceremony?
Well, there's a ceremony, yeah.
There's
a ceremony.
But I mean, do you have to do something specific, like go kill somebody to become an official member?
Well, you have to, that's one of the requirements. You have to make your bones, so to speak. I had been given contracts to kill several people during the course of the investigation.
But you hadn't done it?
No, I did not.
Yeah, but did Sonny Black give you that contract?
Yes, he did.
And you had to do that to be made?
You have to make your bones, so to speak, correct.
Okay. When we come back, we'll pick up on what happened when Donnie Brasco, in fact, Joseph Pistone, FBI agent acting undercover, was ordered to go kill someone. Stay with us. Night Watch continues. Joe Pistone, who was undercover as Donnie Brasco in the Mafia, about to be made if he passes all these tests that you have to pass, including engaging in a contract killing. At that point, the FBI says enough is enough.
Yes, that was one of the reasons, and another reason was at that particular point in time, there were two factions within the Bonanno family, and we got into a shooting war, and Sonny Black's faction had killed 3 individuals that were captains of the opposition, so to speak.
Yeah.
So now everybody was carrying a gun and looking to kill each other. So being that I was so close to Sonny Black and Ruggiero, I was, an obvious target also.
You could have been a pretty big guy in the Bonanno family if you were that close to Sonny Black, couldn't you?
Well, yes, because I was proposed for membership for that coming December. They were going to make more members, and he had put my name up for...
So you become a member. What does that mean?
Well, that means now you're an official member of the family, and you get the protection of the Bonanno family. And as Lefty Ruggiero once said, becoming the advantage of being a wise guy is you can lie, you can steal, you can cheat, you can kill, and it's all legitimate.
That's right. He did say that. He is now in jail based on, in part, on your testimony,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Serving, what, 20 years?
20 years.
You left. Before we talk about leaving, tell me how you would deal with the FBI. How would you get information to them?
Well, what I would do is every undercover agent has what's known as a contact agent, and that's an agent that you have a telephone number where you can reach him 24 hours a day. So what I would do is whenever I had any information that I felt was of value, was important, of evidentiary value, I would call this individual at this number and relay it to him over the telephone.
And you'd also meet him at the Metropolitan Museum of Art?
Yes, outside. I would meet once a month to get my expense money.
Weren't you making money from the Mafia, though? Why'd you need expense money?
Well, I needed expense money to, pay my apartment,
the stuff at home,
pay the rents and et cetera, et cetera.
You decided to pull out, or the FBI decided, or together you decided to pull out. What happens then? What happened to those guys that you'd been dealing with?
Well, what happened was we just we picked a target date to terminate the operation, and that target date, at that point we had a nightclub in Tampa, outside of Tampa, Florida. We had Sonny Black had come down with Nicky Santori, the individual you saw
in the picture.
In the picture, and that weekend we had a meeting with Traffic Canning. On that Monday, Sonny and Nicky flew back to New York, and we just closed the club up and we left. A couple days later, the FBI went to Sonny Black up in New York and told him that he was involved in an undercover operation and that Donnie Brasco was in reality FBI agent Joe Pistone.
And what did he say?
He really didn't believe it. He said, well, if I ever see him again, you know, then I'll know he's an FBI agent. But he called a meeting of the guys in his crew, and the information that we got from other informants was that they were under the impression that the FBI had kidnapped me in order to make me an informant, and brainwash me is what they used, the word they used.
What happened to Sonny Black?
Well, 17 days after he was visited by the FBI, he disappeared, and his body was found under the Verrazano Bridge in Staten Island.
In the Verrazano Bridge, and with his hands cut off.
Yes.
And what does that mean?
Well, that was a sign that he shouldn't have introduced me to other mafia people.
Yeah. So he violated the security precautions.
Yes. Yeah.
What'd you learn about the mafia? I mean, tell us what it is about these people that struck you as singularly significant, interesting, against your perceived notions of them.
Well, the one thing that the downside, the one thing that really was hard for me to handle was how easy it was to kill somebody.
The point I mentioned, they had no regard for
life.
They
had, yes. And when they, anyone that they did kill it was either another mafia member or someone who had been dealing with them for a while, and there was some reason why they thought that this individual should be killed. And how an individual can kill somebody when he was given a contract to do so, and this person might be somebody that he knew for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And after they...
Families might know him.
Families might know him. He might know their wives, their kids. But then they kill him in the afternoon, and then by that evening, never mention the individual again. It was like he never existed. That's the one thing that was really hard for me to comprehend.
If you knew what you had to do, and would you do it over?
Yes, I think I would.
Knowing the risk, knowing the, as you say, the adrenaline push, you'd do it.
Professionally, yes, I certainly would.
Because as a law enforcement agent, it was satisfying.
It was satisfying.
What happens to you now?
Well, I'm just doing some consulting work, private consulting work, and of course involved in the
book?
In the paperback.
Is there a movie coming out on this?
Yes, I'm in negotiations with the major studio now.
Okay. Thank you very much. Joe Pistone, a.k.a.
His name used to be Mickey Featherstone, but that's not the one he's using now. Who he is now and where he lives is a secret from everyone except the federal marshals who look after him. What separates Mickey Featherstone from the thousands of other government informers living new lives in the witness protection program is that he's not your run-of-the-mill criminal. Mickey Featherstone is a killer who's been labeled a psychopath, and he is somewhere out there, maybe in the house next door to you.
Besides all the killings now, there was hundreds of fights, not just fights where I stomped people out, beat their heads in. I know one guy, I beat him so bad his eye came out.
How many people have you killed?
Since in Vietnam, I couldn't tell you. Since I'm home, 6.
The voice has been electronically altered, and we not only had to put him in shadow, but change his features with theatrical makeup. That's how concerned federal marshals are about protecting his new identity. What does Mickey Featherstone really look like? Ask one of the cops who spent a decade trying to put him behind bars.
Sunday morning, look up in the choir loft. Mickey Featherstone's in that choir.
Looks like a choir boy?
Looks like a choir boy. A stone killer who looks like a choir boy.
Joe Coffey was detective in charge of organized crime for the New York City Police Department when he first ran across Mickey Featherstone. The place was Hell's Kitchen, a tough working-class neighborhood of tenements and saloons. The streets were ruled by Irish gangsters called the Westies, who took their cues from old Jimmy Cagney movies and were known as the most violent gang in New York.
How did Mickey Featherstone fit into all of this?
Well, Mickey Featherstone was the muscle, the intimidator. He was the one, like, if you have a vicious dog and you don't want anybody on your property, you cut the dog loose. That was Mickey Featherstone. He was the vicious dog.
You think he's crazy?
Absolutely.
Mentally ill?
Absolutely.
Over the years, a lot of psychiatrists have agreed with that assessment. In fact, Featherstone got off on 3 of his murders because courts and doctors found him to be insane.
You've been described by psychiatrists at different times in your life as being paranoid schizophrenic.
Yes, sir.
A passive-aggressive personality with an acute impulse disorder.
Yes, sir.
Which means that you...
I would swing at you in a moment, in a flash.
Kill people on an impulse. Because you got angry at them.
Yes, sir.
You're not angry now.
No.
You tell me if you're going to get angry.
Sure. But there's nothing to get angry about. You do your job.
So why would Mickey Featherstone want to talk to us? Why else? He's promoting a book called The Westies, which tells the story of his old gang and how they terrorized the west side of Manhattan. What frightened people most about Mickey Featherstone and the Westies was not just that they killed people, it was the way they did it. Ricky Tassiello was a small-time gambler who welched on a debt. In typical Westie fashion, he was shot in a Hell's Kitchen apartment, then cut up in little pieces. The body was never found.
If there was no body, there's no case. No corpse, no case.
Westies do that a lot?
Yes, sir.
Did it bother you?
Yes, sir. They used to crack jokes about it because I was the guy with the rep of being one of the baddest guys, and I'd get sick.
What'd you do with the dismembered bodies?
They were brought out to this place called, we called it Tony's Island. And there's a part in the island where the current just moves very fast, and they throw it in there.
I don't know where you're living, but if I was living next door to you and found out that you were there and read the psychiatric reports and the rap sheet, I would be very nervous.
I imagine so, sure.
In fact, I'd probably call somebody and say, what is this guy doing out on the street? A free man.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that doesn't come to as any surprise to you, right? That attitude.
No, I don't. It's understandable. Why would it'd be a surprise? I wouldn't blame the guy.
So how does it happen that Mickey Featherstone is a free man living somewhere in America under the protection of federal marshals? Featherstone says his cronies in the Westies set him up for a murder he didn't commit. So he went to federal prosecutors and agreed to testify against this man, Jimmy Coonan, the Westies' leader, Featherstone's lifelong friend, and the man Mickey says actually cut up all those bodies.
What was it that made you go to the police?
It was, I felt my only way out of this life.
You weren't just trying to save your own neck.
Oh, yeah, sure I was.
You grew up in a neighborhood where the cops were the enemies, where the gangsters were the good guys.
Yes, sir.
Where the worst thing you could possibly do was talk to the police.
About anything.
About anything.
Yes, sir.
Has it been hard for you?
Sure.
In what way?
Well, my wife and I have lost our families. We'll never see them again. Mine has cut me loose.
Why?
Because of what we done, cooperate. We were raised, you don't do this, and we are doing it.
It was all right if you were a murderer and an extortionist, a hitman, but they cut you off when you started cooperating with the police?
Yeah, it confuses me too, with my family. When I was a bad guy, they badmouthed me. Now that I'm supposedly with the good guys, they don't even want to know me.
Jimmy Coonan, based on Mickey Featherstone's testimony, now resides in Leavenworth Prison, serving a 75-year sentence on federal racketeering charges.
The jury that convicted him expected the same thing to happen to Mickey. They'd been told he'd entered a plea of guilty to similar charges and was facing 20 years in prison. But in the end, after the jury had gone home, Mickey didn't get 20 years. He didn't get 20 days. He didn't even get 20 minutes.
Federal Judge Robert Sweet, after hearing reports from a psychiatrist and federal authorities involved in the case, said he believed Mickey Featherstone was a changed man. The sentence was probation, an outrage to Jerry Shargell, who was Jimmy Coonan's defense lawyer.
Jimmy Coonan, for similar conduct on which he was convicted, was sentenced to a prison term of 75 years. And according to the government's view, they were in pari delicto. In the government's view, they were birds of a feather. That's what the government said. One bird gets 75 years and another gets probation. It's unconscionable.
Shargell, an experienced New York criminal lawyer, says prosecutors will make deals with anyone willing to say exactly what they want to hear on the witness stand.
The danger of this is that the message will go forward to courtrooms, to prison cells throughout this country, that no matter what you've done, no matter who you've killed, no matter what law you violated, shake hands with the government and you can walk out free. That's a very dangerous message.
We asked former U.S. Attorney Rudolph Giuliani, the judge, and all of the prosecutors involved with the case for interviews, but none of them would go on camera to defend their deal.
We, unfortunately, in the law enforcement area and the prosecutorial area, have to shake hands with the devil once in a while. The end justifies the means. Now, if Featherstone doesn't cooperate, we, as a community and law enforcement, don't get Jimmy Coonan. So, was it worth it? Yes, absolutely.
Even if Mickey Featherstone is living out there a free man, and even if maybe someday he kills somebody else.
Well, that's another matter. I separate the two. That guy should be in. Give him a color television set. Let him live in a cell that's carpeted, but don't put him on the street.
In fact, not even federal marshals with a witness protection program wanted Mickey out on the streets. They thought he was too dangerous and belonged in an institution. They finally agreed to take him on the condition he received psychiatric treatment.
After I was sentenced, the judge wanted me to see a psychiatrist. I'd seen him for several months when I first went home, about 6 or 7 months on a regular basis, and he said I didn't have to come back anymore, that I'm fine.
Without having a professional experience, I don't think that paranoid schizophrenia is something that goes away.
Does it bother you that he's out there somewhere in the United States living under a new name? Should it bother the general public?
If the general public knew, and by this program, I guess the general public will know what Mickey Featherstone has done, I wouldn't want to be the guy fighting Mickey Featherstone for a parking space.
How closely do you think the federal marshals are watching?
Knowing the program as I know it, not close at all.
Not at all?
I would say not. They put you out there and they change your name. They give you a new driver's license. They give you a social security card. They get your job. But they're not on them 24 hours a day or even 8 hours a day or even 5 hours a day.
They haven't got two marshals living in the garage or
absolutely
somebody watching from the corner.
They might meet with him maybe once a month or maybe once every 2 weeks.
And if something goes wrong, who bears the responsibility?
Whoever let him out.
The judge. The feds.
I don't think the feds like the idea that he's out in the street either.
The judge?
I would say so. See, Mickey has a way about him. Like I said, he's a choir boy. He's got that. He can con you. He might have conned the judge.
Were you surprised it was so lenient?
Yes, I was. I was shocked. I thought I was going to get some time.
You've got a history of murder, in and out of jail. Never held really a job in your life for very long.
No, sir. Just as a teamster for 21 months.
Forgive me, but you don't seem like the ideal candidate for rehabilitation.
I don't know what to say. I'm rehabilitated. That's all I can tell you. I don't have the hatreds I used to have. I'm not violent like I was.
What's to stop you from getting into an argument with somebody over a parking place in a shopping mall?
What do you mean, arguing over a spot? I'd pull out, let them have it. Let them keep it. Find another one.
Suppose somebody came up to you, pushed you, called you a name, took a swing at you.
I gotta walk away. It's mandatory. I don't want no more trouble in my life. Some people thought I wouldn't last a couple of months out there. I've been home 13 months, living a good, clean, decent life, and I'm not the violent guy that I was in the past.
Hope so. I hope so for the people in the community he's living in now.
What do you think the chances are that there's going to be a happy ending here, that Mickey Featherstone is going to become a productive member of society? What are the odds?
100 to 1.
Dragonhead is the name Chinese gangsters give to their godfathers, their bosses of bosses. And U.S. law enforcement agencies report that Asian gangsters are second only to the Italian mafia, La Cosa Nostra, when it comes to power and importance. That's why more than 1,000 cops from 26 countries met in Las Vegas not long ago to plot strategy and to exchange information about how to deal with this new threat. It won't be easy. The power of Asian organized crime is based in part on a long tradition of secret criminal fraternities known as Triads. And according to the FBI, members of at least one of those Triads, the Wo Hop To, are now operating in this country.
This is Wan Chai, the Hong Kong nightclub district that was made famous decades ago in the novel The World of Susie Wong. It's still a favorite with sailors on shore leave, and it is also the home turf of the Wo Hop To Triad, a criminal gang with about 2,000 members. That may sound like a lot, but by Hong Kong standards, it's small potatoes. Police put the membership of one of the largest triads at more than 35,000.
In Hong Kong, the Triad societies extort the city's street vendors and merchants. In some areas of overcrowded Hong Kong, they control the availability of scarce housing. They control parts of the public transportation system by extorting fees from these privately operated buses in exchange for permission to drive down Hong Kong streets. And Triad members own foreign money exchange companies, control law firms and politicians, and are a power in Hong Kong's booming entertainment and film industry. In fact, last year, there was a massive public protest against Triad influence over Hong Kong's motion picture industry. According to the Royal Hong Kong Police, there are 15 active Triad societies, all secret.
If anyone to be a member of the Triad is illegal in Hong Kong, the sentence is very serious.
The Triads began more than 200 years ago as patriotic organizations on mainland China, then degenerated into criminal gangs.
All these groups follow the Triad rituals. Whenever they want to be a member, they have to go through the Triad rituals.
Until last year, Stephen Vickers was Chief of Criminal Intelligence for the Royal Hong Kong Police.
I have to say that Triads are an essential part of the fabric of Hong Kong society, and sadly, we, as a member of the community of Hong Kong, I think we lack the will to take them on head-on.
Today, Vickers, who now runs Asia operations for an international private investigation firm, is considered an expert on Triads.
One key factor to Triads organized crime is gambling. Chinese people love to gamble, it's a fact. Gambling is a major money earner. It generates huge volumes of money, and the Triads benefit from that.
In Hong Kong, the money involved in gambling is phenomenal. And illegal gambling on horses, as well as betting on legal and illegal Chinese games of chance, are a basic Triad industry. The Royal Hong Kong Police told us that this legal mahjong gaming parlor we visited with an undercover camera is controlled by the Wo Hop To Triad. But if gambling is a basic Triad industry, drugs are a staple. U.S. authorities have seized hundreds of kilos of heroin smuggled into America by the Chinese mob, which has replaced the Mafia, La Cosa Nostra, in the drug trade.
Ethnic Chinese now control about 56 or 58% of the domestic U.S. heroin market.
Richard Lamagna is the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration's narcotics attaché in Hong Kong. And Richard Lamagna says that the Triads play a special role in the heroin business.
The heroin business and the drug business is controlled by independent entrepreneurs who may draw upon their associations with the Triads for talent. It's a talent pool.
And members of the Triad talent pool and their associates are turning up all over the world involved in executions and extortion. An undercover camera in a Chinatown in Great Britain recorded this savage beating of a man who dared open a video rental shop without the permission of the local Chinese mob.
One of the favorite travel destinations of the alleged organized crime figures we talked to is mainland China, where they're investing money and making contacts. Capitalism is flourishing in South China, and so is crime. According to high-level government sources, the Triads already have plenty of friends in Communist China's security forces who help them smuggle everything from cars to VCRs across the border. And intelligence agencies here in Hong Kong say they've already observed high-level meetings between Triad leaders and Chinese government officials. In fact, last year, one high-ranking Chinese official seemed to be praising the Triads in a public statement when he referred to them as patriotic organizations.
Like organized crime in the United States, the Triads are involved in vice, drugs, and violence. We asked Stephen Vickers how Triads are different from La Cosa Nostra, the Mafia.
The key and core difference between the Mafia and Triads is the chap in charge of the society is not necessarily exercising control over the activities of the members of that society.
You make it sound sort of like a fraternity of criminals.
It's a good way to describe it.
So why should we care about a criminal fraternity in Hong Kong? Last year, U.S. law enforcement reported to a Senate investigating committee that for the first time, they had direct links between the Chinese organized criminals in this country and a Chinese organized crime group in Hong Kong. And one of those links was this man, Peter Chong.
And how are you employed?
Take my Fifth Amendment privilege.
Peter Chong is an alleged heavyweight in the Wo Hop To Triad, and his presence in San Francisco's Chinatown became the major concern of this man, Tony Lau, a special agent of the FBI in San Francisco and an expert on Asian organized crime. Lau was assigned to investigate Peter Chong and the Wo Hop To Triad.
What was your reaction the first time you heard the Wo Hop To being mentioned on the streets of San Francisco?
My reaction when I first heard of the Wo Hop To is that the Triads are coming.
How serious a problem were you talking about?
When you have heroin trafficking, when you have loan sharking, gambling, extortion, when you have kidnapping, you got a big problem.
And that makes it more important or more significant than the Bloods and the Crips in Los Angeles?
We're not talking about kids shooting on the street. We're talking about people with links all over the world.
Tony Lau's investigation revealed that Peter Chong was meeting regularly with drug traffickers, gamblers, enforcers, and acting as a mediator at mob sit-downs.
We have sources telling us that the reason for his coming out to be the mediator was eventually for him to consolidate all the factions of the Chinese criminals in Chinatown under the Wo Hop To umbrella.
And Tony Lau's investigation also revealed that Peter Chong was exercising control over hundreds of youth gang members in the San Francisco Bay Area.
How powerful and influential was Peter Chong in the Chinese community here?
At the peak of his regime, he was in total control.
Of the criminal activity?
Of the group in Chinatown who are criminals or gang members.
In Chinatowns across the country, like this one in New York City, when merchants pay protection money, it's usually the local street gangs who are collecting for the neighborhood organized crime group. But according to the FBI, in San Francisco's Chinatown, protection money was paid to street gangsters who said they were collecting for Peter Chong's Hong Kong Triad.
When you have young men who are provided with guns and are willing to kill for you, then you have the power, and the merchants will be afraid of you.
And Peter Chong had that kind of control?
Exactly.
And when a gang war erupted in San Francisco and 5 gangsters were murdered, Peter Chong was right in the middle. Chong provided food, shelter, and bulletproof vests for his Wo Hop To troops. And Tony Lau says that fear in the Chinese community got in the way of his investigation.
It's very difficult to get informants.
Because people are afraid.
People are afraid to talk.
And they have long memories.
And they have long memories. 君子報仇10年未晚. That is an old Chinese proverb.
And it means?
It means that for a gentleman to take his revenge, even if it takes 10 years, it is not considered to be too late.
And this gentleman, Chan Tai, known as Crazy Tai, according to the Hong Kong police, is the dragonhead of the Wo Hop To Triad. And when Peter Chong played host at his San Francisco home to Crazy Tai, Tony Lau's concern grew.
What do you mean dragonhead?
He is the #1 leader of the Wo Hop To family.
The boss of bosses.
Exactly. We don't usually see dragon heads coming to the United States. And here we have a man who has for a long time known to be a dragon head of the Triad organization, coming to the United States in the company of his #1 lieutenant, driving down to Los Angeles, back and forth, meeting with people that we suspected are organized crime people down there.
The FBI bugged the Wo Hop-to's phones, and San Francisco police and federal authorities arrested more than a dozen of Peter Chong's Wo Hop-to followers for loan sharking, drug dealing, murder for hire, and running a house of prostitution. Peter Chong, fearing indictment, decided to head to his hometown, the Triad's home turf, Hong Kong.
Did you like it? My family loves San Francisco a lot. We get used to it.
Why did you have to leave?
I have some reason to leave.
At first, Peter Chong talked freely, denying that he was a Hong Kong Triad boss and that he was involved in any criminal activity while he was living in the United States. But when it came time to talk on camera, he read from a prepared text.
I know a lot of people in Chinatown, including businessmen and some people who have trouble with the law. I have tried to be a peacemaker, and I always tell the kids not to commit crime.
I'm sure that he was a peacekeeper for the purpose of making sure that he maintains the peace so that he could consolidate all the gang members.
Chong insists that he came to America to invest his money and retire.
I came to America just like the other immigrants to give my kids better educations and better free-style life.
Once perhaps you are a Triad member, can you ever retire from a Triad organization? I don't think so.
The law enforcement think that I'm involved with the Chinese organized crime involved is because many years ago, I'm running an illegal gambling house in Hong Kong.
And who is the man who owned that illegal gambling house that Peter Chong managed? Crazy Ty, the dragonhead, who visited Peter Chong in California.
I have nothing to hide. Don't be afraid. Ask anything you want.
The United States government reported that you were the dragonhead of a triad called Wo Hop-to.
I could laugh at that.
You've never been involved with them at all?
At one time, about 20 years ago, yes.
How long were you involved with them?
Quite a long time.
Crazy Ty insists that's all in the past. He told us that today he's a legitimate businessman and that he owns saunas, massage parlors, restaurants, and has major investments on mainland China. He denies that he went to the United States to oversee Peter Chong's operation. So why did he visit Peter Chong?
My daughter went to America to study, and of course, I don't speak English, and I don't have any friends in America. And he, Peter, was a guy who could show me around.
All criminals would claim to be businessmen, and they all have daughters, and they all wish their daughters to be good, successful students in U.S. universities.
And then we asked Crazy Ty how he knew Peter Chong.
He was my follower, worker, and he worked for me, basically.
In what business?
About 20 years ago, I was involved in illegal gambling casinos.
So he worked for you in your gambling operation?
He worked for me for 10 years, but he was sort of small fry then, not as notorious as he is today. I told him that's not a good idea, being a famous, notorious guy.
Meanwhile, Crazy Ty and Peter Chong are in Hong Kong doing business as usual. Peter Chong told us he'd like to return to the United States, and he may get his wish. A federal grand jury is currently considering indicting him and the Wo Hop-to associates he left behind in the United States for everything from conspiracy to commit murder to loan sharking. And then, U.S. authorities are expected to try and have Peter Chong return to the United States to stand trial. Law enforcement agencies aren't the only ones plotting strategy. More than 500 Asian gangsters from Hong Kong and Japan met in Taiwan earlier this month for the funeral of a Chinese gang leader. They used the occasion to renew old acquaintances and to plan for the future, which is looking rosy. Any concern that the Triads might have had about being driven out of Hong Kong when the mainland Chinese take it over in 1997 seem to have gone away. Communist China's top cop, the Minister of Security,
is once again referring to the Triads as patriotic organizations. So patriotic that when China's top leaders traveled abroad, those patriotic Chinese mobsters provided security free of charge.
Over the years, we've done our share of stories about police corruption, but none as astonishing as the one you're about to hear. It's the story of two New York City police officers who stand accused of moonlighting as hitmen for the Mafia. Louis Eppolito and Stephen Caracappa, two highly decorated former detectives, were indicted last month for the murders of 8 people, murders committed on the orders of a vicious mob boss who is now in jail. That mobster is Anthony Gaspipe Casso. He told us about his extraordinary relationship with the two cops in the only interview he has ever given.
I had law enforcement on my payroll, so I had them looking after me.
On your payroll?
Right.
Cops?
Yeah, the cops.
I spoke to Anthony Gaspipe Casso in 1998 in prison, where he began serving a life sentence after admitting to 36 murders. Casso said detectives Louis Eppolito and Stephen Caracappa helped him commit 8 of those murders. His claims couldn't be substantiated at the time, so we couldn't air them until now that the detectives have been indicted. Prosecutors say for a hefty salary, Eppolito and Caracappa would walk right up to Casso's enemies, trick them into believing they were under arrest, and instead kidnap and deliver them to Casso to be executed. That's exactly what Casso told us the detectives did to a young hood named Jimmy Heidel, whom he believed had tried to kill him.
Louis and Steve went by a club where the kid was staying. They believed they were going to arrest him. They put him in the car. I used to have cars for him. I gave him a car for this guy, looked like a police car, an unmarked car. I gave him the car. They put him in the car. The kid thought they were taking him to the station house, but they took him to a garage. When they got him to the garage, they laid him on the floor. They tied his feet, his hands, cuffs, put him in the trunk of the car, right? The police car comes in, the guy's kicking in the trunk. He's making noise. And I took him to a place that I had prearranged, somebody's house that I could use, pulled the car in the driveway. I brought him in there, sat him down. I wanted to know why I was shot, and who told you, and who else was involved, and who, and who gave you the orders to shoot me. After that, I killed the kid. Myself.
You killed it?
Right.
Was it just one shot to the head?
No, I didn't shoot him in the head. I didn't shoot him. I was in somebody's house. You make a mess. I shot him a couple of times. I didn't torture the kid. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything like that.
Well, what's a couple?
More than a couple. It's a couple. Really, I don't know the exact amount. Maybe I shot him 10 times, 12 times.
Maybe 15 even.
It could have been 15. At that time, I gave Louis and Steve, I think, $45,000 for them delivering them to me.
These are the two cops?
Right.
You gave them a bonus for delivering someone to you killed?
Right. Well, they wanted to kill him for me. I didn't even have to do that. They were going to get him, kill him, and throw him, do whatever I wanted to do with him.
What's more, prosecutors say Casso used the two cops to commit a range of dirty deeds. They allegedly tapped into the NYPD database and funneled confidential police information to him, including wiretaps and police surveillance containing addresses and other key details about Casso's enemies. One by one, prosecutors say, Casso had them killed, with a little help from his two friends on the NYPD. Casso's allegations have stunned even the most hardened lawmen who worked on the case, like Brooklyn District Attorney Charles Hines.
And I was shocked, because for all of the experience I've had over the years with police corruption cases, I've never had anything like this.
You never saw anything that came close to that?
I've seen organized corruption cases, but the allegation of two cops being hitmen, in addition to giving up people for hits, just absolutely shocking.
All the more shocking given that the detectives have received hundreds of commendations for bravery and excellence in the line of duty. Louis Eppolito is among the most decorated cops in NYPD history. Amazing considering his family. Eppolito's father, known as Fat the Gangster, was a mob enforcer, and his uncle, Jimmy the Clam, a mafia captain. In the end, the federal prosecutor who indicted Eppolito says he couldn't resist the murderous life of the mob.
For years, Eppolito and Caracappa were cops, mafia cops.
It's an obscenity, Ed, that kind of allegation. It's scurrilous. It's not true. This is me speaking. I'm Lou's lawyer.
Bruce Cutler, who became famous representing mobster John Gotti, is now defending Louis Eppolito against charges that he worked for mob boss Anthony Casso.
Let me ask you, Ed, why would somebody who went up the ladder in the police department, received awards for bravery above and beyond the call of duty, why would you besmirch and tarnish everything you stand for, Ed, to do the bidding of a reprobate like Casso?
If your client is innocent of all of the charges, why, out of all of the officers in the New York City Police Department, did Anthony Casso choose him to say this about?
I can't give you the motive. I never could, I never will, I never could understand it. And I've tried so many federal cases where witnesses like Casso, who want to get out from under, blame others. And especially if it's sexy, if it's appealing. And when you shake the police department like that, it becomes a front-page case.
Louis Eppolito made front-page news for the first time back in 1984 in a case unrelated to Anthony Casso. He was charged with passing files to another mobster under investigation. Eppolito was eventually cleared, but felt betrayed by the police department for suspecting him in the first place. And he said so publicly.
I worked my ass off. I worked my balls off for the city of New York, and all I got was you're Italian, and you had family members that were in organized crime.
This is Detective Eppolito in a 1985 documentary about anger. He had answered a filmmaker's ad in a local newspaper seeking people who were having difficulty controlling their anger. Listen to the depth of his rage as he recalls what he said to his bosses when, while under investigation, they called him in and made him surrender his badge.
I said, if you keep insisting on f***ing with me, I said, I'm going to give you a beating that your mother's going to throw up when I show you a picture. I said, I'm not bull***ing you. I said, don't try to go at me any more than you're doing. I said, because the 4 guys with you got to realize by the time they get up, I said, I'm going to break your nose and take your teeth out at one shot. And the anger started to come.
A year after he gave this interview, prosecutors say Eppolito committed his first murder for Casso and kept on killing well after he retired in 1990. He later wrote his autobiography called Mafia Cops, the story of an honest cop whose family was the mob. He also built a new career for himself as an actor.
I know I'd go from rags to riches.
In Goodfellas, he played, of all things, a mobster. He appeared in more than a dozen films, including one he wrote himself, in which he portrayed a corrupt union boss who crosses the mafia. But in real life, prosecutors say it was Eppolito and his former partner Stephen Caracappa who were doing the killing. They say that for some extra cash, the detectives actually went so far as to pull the trigger themselves. Casso told me the 2 cops brazenly murdered a crime family associate named Eddie Lino after forcing him off a New York City highway.
I gave them $75,000. They killed him cowboy style. They pulled alongside of him, they shot him, they made him crash into the fence alongside the Bell Parkway on the service road. Right? Then Steve got out of the car, ran across the street, and finished shooting him, finished killing him in the car. Then they got back in and they went away.
Nobody in their right mind would go into any kind of activity with Casso because he was a raving, screaming lunatic.
Ed Hayes insists his client, Stephen Caracappa, never committed a single crime for mobster Anthony Gaspipe Casso, much less a murder along a crowded highway.
Can't imagine a riskier thing to do. It's the Bell Parkway at a time when it's very busy. It's not as if there's not going to be people going by and very likely police cars. So it seems like almost a movie version of a crime. It's something, the kind of thing you could see Casso making up.
But someone did it.
That's right.
And they're saying that your guy did it.
That's right. They're saying that he did it. My guy says he didn't. Nobody would take Casso's word for anything.
Prosecutors say Casso has, in fact, lied as a federal witness in past cases. But in this case, they believe the stories he told us about Eppolito and Caracappa. For years, though, prosecutors couldn't corroborate his allegations until an ex-cop named Tommy Dades helped break the case wide open. After receiving a tip, Detective Dades came out of retirement as a boxing coach and went to work in the offices of the Brooklyn District Attorney, digging through old Mafia case files.
You sat in an office for months by yourself, pouring through records, computer files, phone logs.
I would go over as much information to try and come up with a mistake that they made here, a mistake that they may have made there.
Was there a moment when you said, I got him?
There was a moment that got me very excited that I knew I was on the right track.
Dades discovered that Detective Caracappa, who worked in the organized crime unit, had run a search on the police department computer and got an address for a man named Nicky Guido. Guido was one of the people Casso thought was part of the team sent to assassinate him. A month later, at that very same address, Nicky Guido was gunned down. Luis Carbonaro is his cousin.
I remember my mom calling me, screaming on the phone. Louise, they killed Nicky. She said, they shot Nicky. They put 9 bullets in him, and he's dead.
They said in the news that this was a mob hit.
Yes.
How did that impact the family?
Oh, my gosh. Well, we couldn't believe it, knowing Nicky. But then there were the questions. Did he lead a double life, you know?
The truth is, he did not lead a double life. Prosecutors say Caracappa mistakenly gave Anthony Casso the address for the wrong Nicky Guido and led Casso to kill an innocent man.
You know, they glorify organized crime in these movies and all, and they always say, well, they just kill each other. Innocent people don't die. I'm sorry, innocent people do die. They made a mistake, and they hit my cousin by mistake.
So just a case of mistaken identity.
That was it. Senseless. A senseless killing.
The appearance here is that your client runs the name of Nicky Guido through a police department computer, and then within a month, Nicky Guido gets 9 bullets to his body.
Yes, but Caracappa would have been in a perfect position to find out if he was the right Nicky Guido or the wrong Nicky Guido. That's not a mistake that Caracappa could have made.
There's an argument that maybe they were just sloppy.
Yes, I agree with that. But in this country, you don't convict on an argument. You have to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Federal prosecutors say they can meet that burden and now claim to have several witnesses with direct knowledge that detectives Caracappa and Eppolito were hitmen. Tommy Dades, like many other law enforcement officials, is still trying to comprehend the allegation that 2 highly decorated police officers crossed so far over the thin blue line.
You raise your right hand when you swear into the police academy, and you're there to uphold the law and to do the right thing. To actually go out and murder somebody and then go back to work, it takes a certain type of individual to be able to go to sleep at night after that. And they were probably never cops. They were just criminals that slipped through the system and obtained shields,
Louis Eppolito and Stephen Caracappa are in jail awaiting trial. If convicted, they each face life in prison.
Tonight's classic, a story about a man named Oscar Goodman. We called him the mouthpiece because when we first met Goodman back in 1986, he'd gotten himself a reputation as a mob attorney, dubbed the mouthpiece for the mob, mostly because of the alleged gangsters he represented, among them Meyer Lansky, Nick Civella, Tony the Ant Spilatro. Well, things have changed since that story. Now he represents the voters of Las Vegas. For earlier this year, in a city long concerned about its past ties to the mob, the mouthpiece for the mob was elected mayor of Las Vegas.
During my entire professional life, I was fighting the government from the outside.
Right.
And I said to my wife one morning, I said, sweetheart, wouldn't it be great if I could fight them from the inside and keep them honest? And she said, go for it.
When Goodman announced his candidacy, the oddsmakers called him a long shot, and they were not alone. The 60-year-old Goodman had no political experience.
Good. I'm running for mayor, as you know.
Plus that former client list that many argued made him an unlikely candidate. His hometown paper came out against him.
Ooh, you know, if I was a dead person, I wouldn't even have been cold by the time I read the editorial. I filed on a Friday, Sunday morning's paper, headline, "Anybody but Oscar for mayor."
Not only was it anyone but Oscar in the Las Vegas Review-Journal, I don't know who it was that wrote, "Considering Mr. Goodman as the official spokesman for Las Vegas is like considering Bill Clinton as headmaster of a school for wayward girls."
Oh, jeez, I didn't read that one, but that's pretty good.
Yeah, and there were others. Is Vegas remarrying the mob? He has too much blood-soaked baggage. So who was this attorney who during the campaign was called the barrister to butchers? We take you back to 1986 when we first met him. Goodman welcomed me to his lavish Las Vegas law offices, dubbed by law enforcement people the house the mob built.
Here's my favorite room. This is referred to as the Godfather's room by some members of law enforcement.
Over a period of 2 decades, Goodman has defended people like the late Meyer Lansky, the late Nick Civella, and Anthony Spilatro, men the FBI identifies as leaders of the mob. Are you a mob lawyer?
What mob?
I'm simply asking, are you a mob?
No, I'm a good lawyer. I'm a lawyer who defends citizens who are accused of crime.
Period.
Period. Now, I can't help it if these monkeys out there want to call me a mob lawyer. That's their problem.
Well, you represent. Meyer Lansky, you used to represent. Nick Civella.
All right, are they mobsters?
Anthony Spilatro.
Who calls them mobsters?
I think that the general perception has been that Lansky, Civella, and Spilatro are members of organized crime.
Well, all I can tell you, Mr. Wallace, is that, in my opinion, they're used as scapegoats because of law enforcement's inability to control the streets and the epidemic of crime in the streets. They have to create monsters, and they create them. These people are human beings, they're citizens.
Why do so many mobsters, or alleged mobsters, come to Oscar Goodman?
They feel that they can trust me. They know that I won't give them up. They know that when they come to me, I'm not going to be representing other clients who are cooperating against them.
And Goodman condemns the government's use of professional witnesses who have turned against their former colleagues. He says they are paid to perjure themselves. So a man like Jimmy the Weasel Fratiano?
A piece of garbage. And let him sue me.
Really?
A piece of garbage.
Because?
Because he's a liar, and because he's living off of our tax dollar.
Joe Valachi?
Another real genius punk.
So where do the people Oscar Goodman represents, like Tony Spilatro, where do they get their money? In order for Tony Spilatro to retain Oscar Goodman, he's got to have a lot of money. Where does the money come from?
I assume whatever monies I get from, I don't ask him. All I know is when Mr. Spilatro is with me, he's a kind, decent, attentive, genteel person.
This man who was alleged to have...
This man who is a creation of law enforcement's vivid imagination.
Put somebody's head in a vise until the eyes popped out?
I represented him on that case, and the judge found that the witness who testified as to the vice and the eyes and all of that nonsense was a liar.
Is it conceivable, Mr. Goodman, you're just turning your eyes away from where your clients get their money? You don't want to ask too many questions? Intentional ignorance of where they get their money?
No, it's not relevant as to where they get their money as far as I'm concerned.
They're irrelevant.
To me, it's irrelevant as to where they get their money. The grocer doesn't ask where they get their money. The podiatrist, the chiropractor, the doctor, they don't ask. Why should I have to ask?
But as in defending drug dealers, the lawyer who defends racketeers also has his nervous moments.
There were a couple of clients who had a dispute, and instead of going to the courts over their dispute, they went to me as an arbiter. And we were in my office, and one of the clients was sitting over here, and one of the clients was sitting over there, and I closed the door, and I wanted to hear what the problem was.
What was the problem?
Doesn't really matter what the problem was, but unfortunately, I leaned against the light switch, and the lights went out, and I got to be honest with you, I was a little concerned at that point. I hit the floor.
That was Oscar Goodman, the criminal defense attorney. And what does Mayor Goodman have to say today about his former clients?
People want me to apologize for my background. Really, it's amazing. They want me to say that I'm sorry I represented people who were accused of crime, and to be honest with you, I never had a bad day. Always looked at myself in the mirror. Didn't see a particularly pretty face, but I was always proud of what I did.
Even when you defended Meyer Lansky?
It didn't matter who I defended, as long as I defended them in the manner in which I did.
Tony the Ant Spilatro.
My relationship with him was a good relationship.
Law enforcement said that he killed 22 people, and then he himself was killed, beaten to death, and buried in an Indiana cornfield. This is the man?
That's the man.
And you said that you'd rather your daughter went out with Tony Spilatro than with an FBI agent.
All I wanted was be the mayor. Do I have to relive that line every day of my life?
It's former clients like Spilatro and Lansky that caused some to worry that Goodman as mayor would dredge up the Vegas of yesteryear, a mob-run town, that he would sully the image the new Las Vegas has worked so hard to build. Look, Las Vegas is now trying to promote itself as a mecca for family entertainment, right?
That's what the party line is. I'm a great believer that it has to have the mystique that it's had in the past.
Which means?
Which means that I think people want to, when they come out there, if they wanted to go to Disneyland, they could drive another 200 miles, okay? When they come out there, they don't want to see Mickey Mouse under a rock. They want to see a little Bugsy Siegel. I really believe that.
I'm sorry that I missed him, but I've been tied up all day and I just got the message.
So, how did Oscar Goodman go from mouthpiece for the mob to mouthpiece for Las Vegas? How did he launder himself? Well, he didn't get off to a promising start.
I'm at my first debate. I think I'm into the campaign maybe three days. And some fellas sent up like a straw man by one of my opponents, and he asked me a question which he knew the answer to. He said, how many city council meetings have you ever been to? Well, the answer was 0. I mean, I didn't know what a city council meeting was when I ran for office. And after he asked the question, and I started to answer him, he turned around and walked away, and I said, wait a second, come on back here if you're going to ask me a question like that. Look at me when I'm answering you. Well, I can't believe what the public said about that one. You can't speak to people that way. Sure I can. Why be something other than yourself?
During the campaign, it's reported that you used to say, fairly frequently and with a big grin, I'm running for mayor, I need your financial support, and if you don't,
well, I was trying to be a little...
If you don't give it to me, I'll have you whacked.
Well, not whacked.
Goodman maintains what he actually did say was inspired by a movie he appeared in.
I used a line from my casino days when I was there with De Niro and Pesci and Sharon Stone. I said, if you don't give it to me, I'm going to bring in Pesci to break your legs. It's not exactly having it whacked.
Okay. Goodman played himself in Casino, a film about the mob's control of a Las Vegas casino during the 1970s.
We have documents which completely absolves Mr. Rothstein from any wrongdoing. I'd like this...
that was part of me. If I were a podiatrist, we wouldn't be sitting here today. Nobody would be interviewing me. I'd be another mayor, but I am myself, and I don't apologize for it.
And during his campaign, he did not apologize for his past either. What he did do was put forward a side of Oscar Goodman rarely seen in public. He used television to embrace family values with a TV commercial featuring what he called his 5 best accomplishments. And it didn't hurt when some, repeat, some of his former courtroom adversaries endorsed him.
Oscar was one of the best examples of a guy that was a very vigorous and tough fighter, but he never crossed the line.
When all was said and done, Oscar Goodman won in a landslide, capturing 64% of the vote. And it didn't take long for his honor to be honored by Las Vegas' #1 industry on the face of a negotiable casino chip.
I really have to find out how our lobbyists back in Washington are doing.
Goodman now spends long hours learning the ropes of running Las Vegas.
There was no interest without the
There
betting.
was no interest without the betting.
Isn't that amazing?
Talking to his constituents and thoroughly enjoying the perks of his job.
You know where we're going now? The airport to meet the president. So it's the best.
As mayor of Las Vegas, it was Goodman who was first to greet Bill Clinton on a recent trip there. And it was not the first time the two men had spoken.
The day that I was elected, I get back to the office, and the secretary says, the White House called. I said, oh, will you stop it? He said, the president called to congratulate you. I said, will you forget about it? So I had one message at 4:55 and one message at 5 o'clock. The one at 5 o'clock was the White House and President Clinton. The one at 4:55 was a former drug dealer that I represented, both congratulating me. So I said, that says it all.
As mayor, Oscar Goodman has limited power. He has just one vote on a city council of 5 members. But the council is where this persuasive gentleman uses the bully pulpit to try to sway this particular jury to vote his way.
Motion carries.
And Oscar says that whatever he wants, he seems to be getting. What he wants most is to become the best mayor Las Vegas has ever had.
I didn't need this job. I wanted the job. But I really want to make a mark. I want to leave a legacy that this place is better because I was the mayor.
You going to run for higher office?
No, I love this job. I mean, being the mayor...
Come on.
Oh, I'm dead serious. Being the mayor of the city of Las Vegas is better than being president of the United States, better than being governor of Nevada, better than being a United States senator. It's the greatest. Everybody loves the mayor of Las Vegas. You can't beat it.
60 Minutes 2 will continue in a moment.
Tonight, CBS News correspondent Armin Katayan on assignment for 60 Minutes.
Few institutions protect their secrets as passionately or more violently than the...
Bringing them jewelry. Then I bring them television. Then iPods. Then all these stolen merchandise that he was like, I was the goose that laid the golden egg.
You were
and the greed kicked right